Welcome back to another episode of SuckcessFull, the podcast.
I'm one of your hosts, Blake, and joining me,
I'm one of your other hosts, Justin.
And this is the podcast all about the not so subtle truth about success and
the art of sucking less in pursuit of it. Let's not waste any more time and get right to the show.
Justin, the cactus is like right there again.
Well, I got to move over. Now it's perfect. Now it is the quintessential. It looks like I woke up this way. Yes.
It does. It almost looks like a crown.
Well, the irony of that is I dropped the kids off at school today. And this week is like a theme of different things. It was like crazy hat day. And the two ladies that were the crossing guards today have this tiara and then like these pig ear things or whatever behind them. It makes me think of the tiara that they were wearing. Yes.
That's awesome. Does your kids' school allow them to do like Halloween type stuff?
Yeah, I don't think there's any restrictions. I mean, obviously it can't be like, Mike Myers stuff, but I'm trying to think if there's been any restrictions. I don't think there's any restrictions at all. The only thing that they don't do is you can't bring candy to exchange. The school does like this thing at lunch where you can offer candy. Parents can come in, whatever, they pass out candy, but you can't bring candy in or whatever.
That makes sense. That's probably to keep allergies and things at bay.
Yeah. Well, and the worst part is like with the allergy front, you think you have it under control and all of a sudden you find someone else has like an allergy you've never heard of before. Like one of the kids in Jackson's class has an allergy to cotton. I was like, how are you allowed to go to school? That's what I said. I'm like, basically, he's allowed to be in class. He's in second grade. So they're still at that age where they kind of hug a little bit. So you're not allowed to like hug him, which I think is sad too. So it's just, I don't know. It's got to be weird.
That is weird. Well, I have a funny quick story here. It's a little off topic, but it will make everybody laugh because it's still like entrepreneur based. So my mom and I were talking the other day about my brother. When my brother was young, he had a very entrepreneurial mindset, but in like the weirdest way. So when he was in, I think like middle school, he went to the vending machine and took out all the popular stuff out of the vending machine, all the like blue Gatorades, and like certain candy bars that were popular at his school, stuck them all in a bag and then sold them for twice the amount of money because they were no longer in the vending machine. He got in trouble.
High five. That is badass. That is fantastic. I would have loved to see the teachers' faces when, they came in, they're like, so did he buy it out of there and then sell it again? Or did he like break the machine and take it out?
No, he bought all of it out of there and then he sold it for like 2 or 3 times the amount because he bought all the popular stuff out of there. So it wasn't in there anymore. He sold it for more money. So he got back what he spent and made a profit. But yeah, he got in trouble for that. And then in elementary school, he started like this one's hilarious. He started drawing like little on pieces of paper. He started drawing like fake money on pieces of paper. Like I'm talking little doodles. Like it wasn't like, oh, this looks real in any capacity. Like he straight up was making fake little like artistic money and he was selling it and he got in trouble for that too. And my mom had to sit him down and be like, selling money is probably not the best choice. He's like, it's art. He didn't get it because he was, in elementary school.
That's tough. That is a tough one. I'm not going to lie. Just to be clear, he's not indicted on any charges of counterfeiting. Is that correct?
No. That was just, he got in trouble because he wasn't supposed to be selling stuff at all. But he saw it as, well, I just made my art and people liked it. And so I started selling it. But he was selling his like fake money for, I don't know, like $5 and stuff. Like he was actually making money off of it. And I remember he came home with all this money. My mom's like, where'd you get that? He's like, oh, these kids on the bus bought my fake money. And my mom's like, oh my God.
What? I think it would have been okay if he didn't call it fake money, right? If he called it like exactly what it was. But yeah, I think the money doesn't help there. I gotta say though, I think that's part of the problem. Again, this is off subject, but I think it's an important one. And I think it's one of those things that school misses though. Like they don't nurture that kind of behavior a lot of the time. Your poor brother got in trouble for that when in reality, you can tell he's being creative and he's trying to use a creative outlet in a positive way, but it's hard for someone like that. I imagine I did crazy stuff, but I didn't do vending machine stuff. I did one time when we were at swim team and people always left their goggles behind, right? So there was a lost and found. So I went in one day and they'd been there for a while and I just took them all and then I sold them all, and that was pretty good. But the problem with it is some people wrote their name in it and I didn't pay attention to that, like on the band in the back. They got it home and their mom would be like, these aren't yours, but I paid for them. So anyway, it resulted in something bad. But the point of it is that I didn't get like kudos. Hey, way to go. You need to refund everybody. Don't ever do it again. It kind of dashes your hopes. So I understand a little bit about your brother. I appreciate it. If you've got a kid like this out there, people don't dissuade them. Just put them in a positive direction.
I agree with that 100% because they don't teach that stuff in school. They don't teach entrepreneurship. I mean, even in high school, we had some like entrepreneur club thing. They didn't really teach any of that stuff. They taught like how to wear a business suit type stuff, which they went through in home ec of like what you should wear to an interview.
Well, and then they probably taught you like resume crap and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stuff that it's important, but again, life isn't, I don't know. That we need to make that a subject. That is an important one, I think, out there.
I agree.
But let's dive into it today. Excuse our slight digressions, but you know the show. That's what we do. That's what makes it entertaining and fun, and you still learn something. So today we're going to continue our conversation from last week, and I wanted to start with a story about how do you know when communication is just so off? What do you do about that? So I had a client earlier this year that we were trying to make some changes. It was weird because I thought it was crystal clear. Like we were doing Zoom meetings and then we would follow up with notes afterwards. And they were very, in my opinion, this, like very outlined, very specific. I started getting annoyed because I'd get a question back like, I don't understand that. And it would be something like complete project on this date. And I'm like, I don't understand. Where are you lost in this? And then it would come back with, I'm not sure we agreed to that date. And I'm like, okay, so that's the problem. It's the date. Well, no, it's not really the date. It's the subject. I'm like, so then I got really frustrated and mad. And I could tell that my tone was starting to change even in email. We just write back like, yes, no, like very specific words. You could tell that she was getting pissed. And so we finally got in the Zoom call and it ended up that she didn't really want to make the change at the end of the day. She knows she needed to, right? Like it was one of those that she absolutely had to make the change, but didn't want to make that change. And so it ended up being, we delayed it. We talked about it more and we ended up working through it, but it was a very weird communication point because from my side, it seemed really clear. From her side, it seemed really clear. And she couldn't figure out why I wasn't understanding what she wanted to do. And I couldn't figure out why what I was writing was being misconstrued. And at the end of the day, it wasn't about what I was writing was being misconstrued. It was the fact that she didn't want to do it. So instead of creating a clear communication channel and saying, look, this isn't really like the right time for this stage of this, I'd rather do this instead, it came across as this weird kind of passive aggressive kind of stance. Our relationship definitely took a hit. I'd say probably for maybe a month and a half, maybe a month, something like that, where it was just like, it wasn't quite as jovial. It was kind of like we're still testing the waters. And now we're back to totally normal. But it was a very weird example for me of being what I thought totally aligned. Like we would literally get on these calls, we'd outline everything and agree to it. I'd send it afterwards. The one that always sticks in my mind was, we're going to complete this on this date. I don't understand that. Well, I don't feel like it's up to debate here. Like it seems that one is pretty specific, but I think this is a good example of communication can go awry at any level of a relationship, especially a business one. And so I think for me, the best advice I can give here is it's tough when you're dealing with other people. You get emotions, you get all those other feelings. And so what I would suggest, what I did in this situation that ended up helping was I put my ego aside eventually and just listened. And I kept asking open-ended questions like, explain to me what you mean by this, because I don't understand. And we just kept going and picking until I finally got to the root cause of what was really the issue at hand. Getting out of my head, because at first, I think it's natural to get kind of defensive when you're already moving at a fast pace and you don't want to kind of pause for a second over something that you think is really clear. I think those are the critical juncture points when you go, okay, there's a flag on the field. We have to stop here for a second and we have to reevaluate. And I think that is a really, really important thing to do that is often overlooked. And yes, it sucks sometimes to be the bigger person, but in a relationship, especially a work one, it is, I can't recommend it more highly, especially if it's one you want to keep. If it's one you don't want to keep and you realize, and we'll get to that in a second, kind of how do you know it's a bad one and not to continue it, that'll be a different answer. But for one that you want to salvage, it's a lot easier a lot of the time to get out of your head, ask those probing questions in a nice way and not be curt like I was to start with and be like, yes, no, what, it came across, I was being passive aggressive as well. What are your thoughts?
Oh, you're talking to a Capricorn. Capricorns are very like, as Rob likes to say, the Capricorn judgmental eyebrow.
All right, fair. Fair, I like that.
I get very aggravated with certain things with communication, but one thing that I would say for advice to all that, set yourself up for success when it comes to communication. Everyone's communication style is different. If you are the type of person who needs to go back and be reminded of certain talking points or things like that in the actual conversation, take notes. One thing that aggravates the fuck out of me, Rob, I love you, but this is for you. We fight about this all the time for the 10 years that we've known each other and been producing partners. Rob likes everything in email or in text, but mainly in email because he wants to be able to go and look things up in email. I am the type of person who I like getting on the phone and being like ABC, XYZ, okay, goodbye. And then, or I'll text you because I'm busy. He hates that. I can't send one thing through text. It all has to be on email. He likes it in email. That's what he likes. I hate that. So over the years, I've had to be listen, I don't always have time to send you an email, or I'm not in front of my computer where I have to bring up a different app on my phone and do all this stuff on my phone. So when you're in that situation, be present in the conversation, take notes, set yourself up for success. Everyone's going to communicate differently. And one thing that I've struggled with some of my other partners in the past, where we weren't exactly on the same footing when it came to communication and when it came to working together in a balanced way, was that same problem. But we would have a whole conversation and then they would just not pay attention and then forget. And then they expected me to make up for that by having the conversation again and again and again, anytime that they needed the information. So for example, over the years, I've had to teach people how you actually write the cover letter and things to a film festival, because a lot of people think it's about, oh, my film's so great, blah, blah, blah. No, there's certain things in that letter that need to be there because the festival needs to know certain things about your film in order to decide if your film is in alignment or not. And if you have premiered other places and those types of things, I have an outline that I've taught people over the years who have been doing that. I often will, if somebody calls me up, I don't just send the outline. I'm working, I don't have it, whatever. So I'll tell them on the phone, oh yeah, that's great. Thanks so much. Get off the phone, typing up email. A few minutes later, hey, so what did you say? Take notes. I'm on set, cannot respond. Take notes. Thanks.
So I see your point. I truly do. It's a pet peeve of mine too, but I realize most people don't take notes. One of the things that's fun about this conversation is you always come in with a set of notes and I come in with much more broad set of notes. I know that yours are going to be and it's awesome and all that, it's great that way. I think it works really well, especially in our relationship, just period, because it's a good balance there. I do think that when you get to the point where emails versus text versus that is so extreme, there has to be a middle ground there to me. First of all, I think it's obnoxious email. I hate email. I can't wait for the day
I hate
when
emails.
It goes away. I'm looking forward to that. Whoever's working on that, please comment below. When is the termination date on email? Because I'm looking forward to that date. Texting is one of those things I think is very funny because people have strong opinions on it. I learned the other day, I was getting my hair cut and she was talking about, she has a younger client and apparently they don't use emojis anymore. I was like, well, I don't care. I think emojis are hilarious. It's just weird that she's like, well, you really shouldn't use emojis anymore. And I'm like, because they don't? What? That doesn't make any sense to me. And so I think there's just a balance with these things. And especially in that instance, I don't know, that would really be annoying to me. And I'm the type of person, see, I'm the opposite, where I would purposely only text until the message came through. You know what I'm saying? Oh,
I've definitely done that. Rob. Okay. So Rob and I are so hard-headed with each other though, that there is no, he's a cusp sign, which means he has more than one main sign, and he's part Taurus. Tauruses are the bull of the zodiac. He is the most stubborn person ever. And he will be like, no, 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 until you literally want to bash your head into a wall. Love you, Rob, but you know this about yourself.
XOXO.
And about me. But we argue, and it's funny because actually, to get into the partnership aspect, the only time we really fight is when we're working together, because you have to advocate for your creative vision when you're working together as an artist. Well, we tend to produce and co-direct a lot. So there's times on set where I'm like, it's going to be like this. And he's like, it's going to be like that. I'm like, no. And then we're like, and we're just like, and this will go on for about 5-10 minutes. And then suddenly we'll agree on something. And everyone else is like, And then everything's normal. And we're just like, all right, let's go. We're going to do this. And they're all like,
Are
okay.
you okay? Mom and dad, are you okay? What's up?
It's like, this is normal for us. It's all good. Moving on.
Next. But again, I think like to the outside eye, that is kind of a weird thing. Like when you've witnessed that, but when you guys, I mean, you guys know each other for a long time, you've worked together for a long time. It's healthy to have that dynamic because you know at the end of the day, you're going to be able to come back together and high five each other and go, we got through that. I think this is a cool transition period here. How do you know when it's done? Right? Because I think a lot of people struggle with this. Like we keep pulling this thread to say, okay, one more chance, one more, like, but I love them. My favorite is, but I love working with this person. Are you sure? It doesn't seem to be the case. So for me, what I do is if it becomes toxic, like your relationship, in general tends to be, you are the very focused one, right? So like Rob, when you have two focused people together, it is a great environment when you guys are in sync. When you're not in sync, it's very caustic. Like you rub each other wrong, but you know your boundaries, you know how to deal with that. And that to me is a good relationship. What happens when the distinction for me is when it becomes parasitic or it becomes to the point where I don't like looking forward to that person. So for instance, if I have to work with them for a week in a row and I'm going, oh, every day, that to me is the start of the sign. Now, maybe we can get through it depending on what it is, but that's usually the start to me that says, this is not a partnership. We will get through this task. We are not going to work together again. I think that part of you need to set your own boundaries, what that looks like for each person, right? And what you expect. Because like, for instance, if you're at a work team and you didn't get chosen, you were told to do this, like voluntold, right? To do this task, that's a precarious situation. So you've got to be kind of the bigger person and work through it. And then when it's over, I'm never going to work with that person again or those people again. But if you're in a, your own business or you've got a partner in writing or you're a producer and you've got a whole team around you, the nice part about that is you can help shift and design your teams in the right way because that will enable you to be more successful. What part of the problem is that a lot of people work with people like them. And that is also a fallacy because like for me, when I meet people like me, I get really annoyed with them. I love them at first, like that first 20 minutes, we're like, yes. And then we start working together and I'm like, I don't really like you, because we just hit heads all the time. Like we're just loggerheads because I'm a Virgo and I'm very stubborn though. I'm not the no person. I'm just stubborn. I'm like, well, okay. Like we said earlier, you don't want email. I'm just going to text the crap out of this, that's that I'm passive aggressive in that way. A lot of the time it's meant in jest and it's meant to be funny and people don't always see it that way. I think there's that healthy balance of figuring out what your boundaries are and also being respectful of others. So like, for instance, if Rob is sitting there and going, look, I only want to be communicated this way, there needs to be a healthy give and take and say, all right, look, that's fine. But it's also 2023 and there's a million other ways to communicate. So what I want to do is let's set a precedent. Like if I text you, I expect a response, but I'm going to try to only email you, that kind of thing. Like a little give and take there, kind of that healthiness. But if he keeps coming back saying, no, 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 something needs to give in that relationship. Because again, if you're always accommodating or you are always kind of changing the narrative, that's not going to work either, especially for entrepreneurs. Like this is my message to all entrepreneurs out there or anyone who is desiring to be an entrepreneur. Don't settle for that crap because that will start dampening your spirits big time, right? You've got to give to a certain point, but then at some point you have to learn to say no. That's part of being a successful entrepreneur. If you're always the yes person, you're going to get taken advantage of. And if you're always the no person, you're going to be difficult to work with. So you've got to find that balance in there. And that is what's going to set you apart because especially in Hollywood, it's so funny to me for such a creative industry, they are filled with no people. It is filled with no people. And I don't really understand why it's successful and why it works that way, but it does. It does. But you'll find that people naturally gravitate to other people that are like, want to work with them more, even if they're a great director, or a good producer, or a great actor, if they're more open and giving. Same thing in life, same thing in entrepreneurship. So I'm going to pass it off to you for a second. Get your thoughts, Blake. What do you think?
Well, first I want to say you dropped a really big knowledge bomb there. So
Yes.
First one of the day, high five. I agree with you. And so to get back, because we talked about the conflict part with Rob, but we didn't talk about the resolution part. So what we've decided is that if I'm going to send him notes on, because oftentimes this is like specific to when we're working for film stuff. He does a lot more of the editing and stuff like that for our projects because he's more technically minded with that. That is not really my area of expertise. There's like certain aspects of it I do, but once it reaches a certain tier, it's just he and I have decided that, okay, if I'm going to be sending him stuff and I'm not on the go, I will try to email him.
Okay.
If it is, I'm on the phone with him and it's something he decides that he wants notes on, he has to take the notes, or he has to send the email to himself and to me, is how he's done it. And for him, because he has like ADHD and stuff like that, it's easier for him to keep things in a certain organization pattern for him to remember stuff and to keep himself on track. So I understand that part, but we've had discussions over where the accountability is. Like, it can't always just be on my side or just on his side. So finding that balance, like you're saying, I think is important in any partnership, whether that's, business or romantic, or even if it's just going into some sort of brand deal with another company or another person, or, whatever. I think it's important to figure out, like you said, where those boundaries are, where the middle ground is, where the communication middle ground is, because not everybody communicates the same, and figuring out how to set yourself up for success in that area so that when you move forward, you're moving forward together with the same goals and values and things in mind.
I love it. I think it's, again, not only did you drop a knowledge bomb, I think you just said it so succinctly, where it took me, 5 minutes. You did it in probably 2. So I tip my hat.
Well, I just reiterated what you said. So
maybe that's why I like it. See, that's a good partnership. That's the other thing you can do is you can summarize these things. Did I freeze? Can you see me?
You're frozen, but your voice isn't frozen.
That's weird.
That's new.
That's a definite new one. I don't know what to do about that, but I'm going to keep talking for a sec. Although that's a very interesting pose I'm in there. I think that's part of it, though. Like, sincerely, the idea that you're complementary to each other. That's the thing I think that makes a really good team. The hardest teams I've ever been on was when I worked at, and it was all engineers. It was a very, very high-end project. The problem with it is that all the engineers thought they had the right answer. When you're looking at a guidance system, when you're looking at the booster, you're looking at all these different parts of things, everyone thought they had the right answer, and they built it without looking at the whole picture. Because it was what they call a black program, they didn't know how it all came together. So there's systems engineers that at the end of the day tell them what to do to meet a certain spec so that it all rolls up together. Well, we finally got, it took, 3 months, whatever, to everyone kind of put their pieces together. And then we looked at what they call the AUR, which is all up round unit. It was insane. Nothing talked to each other. And we had to deliver the product, I think, in 6 months. And that was basically starting all over again. We had to have a sit down meeting, and eventually, I think there were about 12 or 15 engineers, chief engineers in the project. I don't remember, but 4 of them walked away, literally just threw in the towel and walked away. We recruited 4 more. And what we did this time was we looked for people that wanted to be a part of a team. These other guys they'd done it for 30 years. And they'd always been on programs where they were the head of everything. It just, their mentality wasn't there yet. So we recruited some younger guys. Actually, I think it was 2 women, 2 men anyways. They joined the team, and we were actually not only able to get it out in 6 months, but everyone understood their piece better, because what we did was, you can't tell them how it all's supposed to look, but we told them kind of more about what their piece did and how it should communicate. And it really changed the whole dynamic of everything. And it was very interesting because there were a lot of constraints in that. On a program where you can't tell them what it's really for, you even get briefed for it, but you don't know the entirety of it, which is incredibly weird. On top of that, you've got these people that are really specific in what they do. Like, a guidance system engineer is a very specific, you get a degree in that, it's very tight. And then telling them, but it has to meet this spec with this in the background, is so freaking weird. It was very, very odd to do all this together. It was a very weird experiment, but something that was really, really cool to come together. And I was much younger when I did this, and it really scared me because I was terrified I'm going to miss this massive deadline, everything else. But then we had a sit down moment. And what we found was, and that was kind of my first realization, that you've got to have symbiosis. You've got to have camaraderie in the team. Otherwise, it will not last, especially because one thing that people forget about teams is there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be tight deadlines. There's going to be people that demand too much. There's going to be things that break. It's not going to go right most of the time. And so you've got to get people that will support you in that and not throw you into the bus. Because part of the thing that I've run into too is wanting too much credit. When someone wants all the credit, that's the worst feeling in the world, especially when you've worked on something. There was a great comedian I heard one time, and she was hilarious. She was like, when I was that kid in class that, there'd be a project and I'd sit in the back of the class and I'd be, getting high, whatever. And then I'd show up the last day and I got full credit for it. Now, they hated me, but I got full credit. I'm like, I know those people. They annoyed the crap out of me. She apologized on stage, but it was interesting hearing that analogy because you're like, yes, I remember you people. Like that sucked, especially when you're someone who's doing something. Don't be that person. Like that's kind of when you find those people, that is not a good fit. That's when you kind of raise your hand and say, look, this is not going to work for us. We need help, or you replace them, right? That's what I've run into. Don't tolerate people that aren't there to support. And again, I use the word symbiosis because I think it's so important, because I think of like a team, like an organism. You all perform a function there, but if you're not all working together, it can be catastrophic.
Or somebody who has an overinflated sense of what their part is in the particular project or what you're doing. I've actually run into that being a larger problem than the other one, because I feel like once you are used to kind of finding those people who will talk the talk but not walk the walk, it's really easy to identify them. But the ones that have the overinflated sense of ego when it comes to their importance or how much value they're actually adding takes a little bit more time and a little bit more discernment oftentimes, because in the beginning, they don't come across that way. Like, I think I told this story actually in one of our other episodes. I can't remember, but I had met this filmmaker who was a writer director. She wanted to tackle her first television show. We ended up producing and writing for a pilot of hers. She just like could not make up her mind about the characters. At the time, I had another writer I was working with who I suggested we bring on, and we kind of like writer's room the script. And long story short, we ended up re-breaking down the characters. She really liked it, and she said, why don't you just take a crack at it? We ended up rewriting her script for her. And then at the end of everything, she took that and completely changed it back to the other script, like the other characters and like where she had gone with it before. So we sat her down. We said, look, like, if you want to go that direction, that's fine, but we can't keep doing this back and forth stuff. It's a waste of time and it's a waste of energy and it's not getting anywhere. And then she proceeded to go on this whole tangent about how this was her script. She had done all the writing, all the stuff, and that all of our ideas were her ideas, essentially trying to take credit for the whole thing. The person I brought onto the project was really upset. Oh my God, she's going to take all the credit. We need to sue her, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, it's a waste of time. And she was like, wait, what? And then she got real upset with me. I said, listen, this woman cannot make up her damn mind. Nothing's going to happen with the script. She can take the idea because it's not going to be our idea by the time she's done with it. And it's not going to go anywhere. So what's the point? Just let her fail. Let's just get off the project, say, sure, go do whatever you want with it, and take our names off. We want nothing to do with it. And that's what we did. And to this day, about, let's say that's probably like 7 or 8 years later, she has not done anything with that project.
And you're stunned, right? You're stunned.
Yeah, I know. I'm very surprised. Although my old writing partner might be more surprised than me.
Just speaking of kind of that world right now, I've got a buddy right now that got tasked with basically putting a project together. And this actress, she's an influencer for, I think, makeup or something. Anyways, I had an idea. She wanted to go behind the scenes of this area. And it's kind of like Project Runway, but it's a different side of it, I guess, or something like that. She was like, I can raise $300,000 and I want 6 episodes. And he kind of like took a pause and was like, that's like $50K an episode. She's like, yeah, that's more than enough. He's like, well, I can give you the $50K version. I can give you a version for anything, but I know what you're looking for in the quality. I can't give it to you at that price. She sent it out for bid. She was like, I don't believe you. So she sent it out to bid for like 7 people, which cost her, again, like, I think just the bidding process alone cost her like, I think $8,000 or something, because she had to reach out and set it all up. So again, just waste of money. They all came back between 150 and his was like 136 an episode, something like that. So within that range, she's like, again, I don't believe any of you. And at that point, he's like, I'm done. He was really excited because it sounded like a fun project. He liked her. But then he realized it's just done. So we talked about it yesterday. He's not going to go forward with the project, but it was interesting to me because he's done this for 2 decades now. And he's just so funny. He's like, look, I can do it at any budget, but I know what you're looking for. And she's like, you can do it for this. And he's like, well, I can, but it's not going to be what you want. And so, the best part was, I guess they had a call on Monday and she brought up all the figures and he's just like, well, mine's right in line with that. And she goes, I know, that's a problem. And he's just like, what? wait a second here. So he finally, I guess he was like, let me sit on this for a night. And then we talked yesterday and he's like kind of fleshing the idea out. And he's like, look, I just don't think this is going to be worthwhile. And I'm like, I think that's a good choice. I think you're just going to be fighting, like you said, you're going to be fighting the whole time. It won't be your project. It will be a struggle the entire time and it will not be a partnership. So if that's the case, it's time to kind of cash in your chips and walk away. It was very gracious about it. And I guess, of course, she came back and was, I will never work with you. Instead of taking it graciously and is like a good thing and trying to be honest, she really just kind of continued to throw him under the bus and he laughed it off a little bit. But I'm sure his ego's hurt a little bit.
Unfortunately, that's a really common story. I can't tell you how many stories of that I have from the industry. But I think that gets to a really good point of if you feel like you're having to force the relationship or force the project to be a certain way or to happen at all, likely you're doing it with the wrong people. And I heard this quote recently that I highly agree with this particular quote and recommend that you really take it into account. The people you work with and the projects you choose to work on are more important than how hard you're working.
Oh, love that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important thing to really sit there and consider, because if you are working hard, that doesn't necessarily mean that your progress is going to be in line with the amount of work you're doing, nor does it mean that you're going to gain that same level of success or that they're going to be equal. Oftentimes, the people who are really successful, they talk about how things fell into place. It's not because they got lucky. It's because they found the right people, the right time, and the right opportunity. Once you get all those pieces and you align them, it makes the right puzzle. And that's ultimately what you're trying to do.
I love that. I think it's absolutely right. And I think that this is kind of a cool segue here to talk about. So how do you know you have a good team, right? When I think we've alluded to that this whole time about having you congeal together, you've got a symbiosis, you've got a good working relationship that's kind of adds friction, but it doesn't blow up, right? Because you need that creativity, especially if you're a creative person, you need that little kind of rub a little bit to get that friction going and go, then you kind of get it. And you start spinning and brainstorming and everything else. So I think all those are really helpful. But I think the biggest thing for me is understanding and setting clear objectives right off the bat. Because a lot of times when I've worked with teams, what I found is that they come together and they don't really know why everyone's there. They got chosen for this or whatever reason. And it's very rarely told to them exactly what are you doing here? What is your role and how we see you fitting in? Usually it's assumed, well, that person's here, so that's for this. But it's really nice to sit down and like what I do now is anytime a team is formed, I will sit down with everybody and we'll go around the room and talk about kind of your background. So we'll get to know each other and everything. But then I go and I'll identify like, you're here for this reason. This is how I see it playing out. What are your thoughts? We kind of talk about it out as a team. And what people do right off the bat is then they start realizing, okay, I understand what's going on over there. So I need to work with that person on this. They start thinking internally as well. And then they also will kind of divert and say, that has nothing to do with my piece of it. So I actually probably am not going to work as closely with that person, but these two other people, we need to be tied at the hip. And I think those little conversations, that also helps because I think, there's always the storming, norming, and forming. There's all these different theories on team building. But I think the piece that they overlook the most is the personalities. Getting the right personalities is key. It's less about what they do and it's more about their personalities. Because again, everything can be taught. And it's also when you get the right people together, it becomes a creative just den of awesome. I just think it's so important to go those routes. When you are in a team or you're thinking about forming a team, I want you to consider everything we talked about here, but really, really focus on the personalities. And then once you have everyone in place, why are they there? What are they meant to contribute? What is your expectation of them to contribute? And kind of what's next, right? What are the clear deliverables? Because again, like when you started with your story a second ago, that makes me giggle. One of the best things in entertainment is you get a script and everyone's like, this is a great script. And you read it and you go, all right, this is going to need some work. So then you sit down and you wait, you put all this time and effort into it. And then it doesn't materialize the way you want it to because you get so excited. Like we did it, we cracked it, like we've solved this issue. Well, that wasn't exactly what we're looking for. What? And that's the start of the downfall a lot of the time. And so that's why when you see in entertainment, all these projects, I mean, you go to Marvel, you go to DC, those are great examples of they started one way. And usually by the end, there's a new director, a new writer, new cast, because there's so much friction off the top of there was different expectations and everything. So to avoid a lot of those pitfalls, really, really think about it and be methodical about what you're doing. And more importantly, at the end of the day, like this. Have fun. I think we forget that teams need to have fun. A lot of the time, we're so focused on the outcome, we forget the piece that creativity, your ability to perform longer, and your ability to deliver on time goes up dramatically when you are in a place of emotional freedom, but also camaraderie and humor.
Well, and when you have clear expectations and everybody kind of knows what their job is, who they need to go to for what, it changes the dynamic entirely of the project to where things are a lot more clear. There's a lot less of, I guess, fighting over who should get what credit and this and that. I mean, especially in the entertainment industry, you're going to be dealing with a lot of people who have a lot of different big egos. So putting all those people in one room can be creative genius, or it can be a fucking nightmare. And one thing that comes to mind for me is with what you're talking about in those examples. One of the biggest pilots that I did had so many people attached to it. I didn't even know half the people. I never even met them in the credits. And I was the executive producer, the writer, and director. And the reason I bring that up is because I had such a good team of people that I hired to be my like right hand, that they went and handled all their departments. And I literally didn't have to worry about a thing other than the creative side and the pitching and the stuff that like was my sole responsibility. And it got me to California. So with that being said, when you build your team, it is more about making sure that it's the right people for the job. And with the right people, I mean more specifically the personality and how they work together. Because I can't tell you how many people I had hired on that project who had never done whatever it was before, in terms of, I had actors who had never actually done a real project before. I had people who weren't even technically in the entertainment industry, but had the business know-how. So when I gave them instruction, they knew the business side enough that they could go and do the other aspects of it that I needed in terms of management, even though they hadn't done the film set side of stuff. And I was able to teach those things to those people and still make it work in a way where there weren't problems. Obviously there was still time constraints. There were still certain people who didn't get along with each other. There were still fires that had to be put out. But ultimately that project moved pretty smoothly. And it's because it trickles down from the leadership. So if you're the main person who needs to be the leader, then you need to create your sub leaders who can handle those sub pieces for you in a way where you're communicating effectively. They're doing their job. They're working together well, and they're able to be successful in that position.
Damn, Blake. Beautiful. Again, you summarized it great today. I got to tell you, your summarization and your succinctness is on point today. And I don't know if it's because you're wearing a frilly coat, or if it's that you're just in massive confidence.
My California cowgirl jacket. It's got the fringe on it.
Exactly. Well, it's awesome.
There we go.
It's hilarious. Well, see, you need a hat. You got to.
I do need the hat, although I don't know. No, I draw the line at the boots. That's a no.
Okay.
I'm not that Southern, even though I came from Georgia.
So as we wrap up here, one funny story. When I was in Europe last week, it was really funny because they all, when you tell someone you're from Texas, they're always like, they have this perception, right? Especially across the world, that you're a cowboy. And I'm like, is there anything about me that looks like I'm nowhere near
that
about
you're
that?
A cowboy?
Well, they just assume because you're from Texas. Like they have this idea that like Texas is like, and I looked at him and I said, do I look like, like, no, not at all. I'm like, exactly. No. In fact, no. I have lived here almost, I think it's going to be 10 years in January. And I will tell you, I've only met a handful in my day here. It has become so many people from California, the West Coast, have all moved here that it's more like that now than it is like the Western style. And it's really funny because they asked me if I had a pair of boots. That's what made me think of it. And I'm like, I've never owned a pair of boots. Now, my brother, he has a bunch of different boots because that's kind of his style. He's got a giant belt buckle, that all that kind of stuff makes me giggle. I have none of that. And I don't really have anything leather to begin with. Like, I'm not against leather. I just don't, it's not my thing, no, definitely not a cowboy over here. But you pull off the cowgirl look. I like it.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of surprised. Actually, everyone's surprised that I bought this jacket because I don't know, ever since I grew up in Georgia, I have very much tried to separate myself from the Southern aspects of my roots because I don't appreciate all of it.
Well,
and But I feel like California is a different kind of, it's like that desert vibe, Southern cowboy, cowgirl type thing. It's a different connotation.
It is. It's less racist. Yes.
Yes, probably.
Oh God. No offense to the South. I live in the South. You live in the South. But come on, let's be realistic here. It was only 60 years ago. So let's keep it real for a second.
Actually, side note, this is off topic, but something I think everyone will find interesting. So women were not even able to open their own bank accounts and have credit cards and things by themselves without a husband until the 70s. That wasn't that long ago. Isn't that crazy?
Well, okay, yeah, that's crazy. But I also like, one of the things that I think is funny is my grandmother, like all of her friends, I remember growing up, had like this weird hairdo that was really like coiffed and like it was like went up. I don't know how to describe it, but it was like this typical like kind of
Like
curly
the beehive thing.
It was like a beehive. Yeah, like a beehive,
Yeah.
but like you only washed your hair once a week, that kind of thing. I just remember I touched it one time and she got all mad. Anyways, and now I look at my mom because she was like the same age and it's so different. She doesn't have white hair. And yes, no offense, mom, I know you dye it, but it looks great. She's maintaining herself in a very different way. And it's just funny to me that even looking back a generation, how different it was. My mom, like I'm sure your mom's similar too, you know, they're getting a little bit older in age. I know your mom's quite a bit younger than mine, but I mean, like, you know, she's embracing kind of a different avenue. You know, my grandma would wear muumuus and, you know, all these weird things that you're like, grandma, don't give up on life yet. And I think that with the checking account, with all that kind of stuff, I think it's just this new generation of people in the last 50 years that are appreciating this and doing things differently, which I think is really important.
I think it is too. And I also think it's a testament to what you can accomplish in your own lifetime in terms of change.
Absolutely. And with that, Blake, I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, audience. Don't forget to comment down below. We'd love to hear your stories.
And also tell us your favorite cowboy or cowgirl story. Please don't forget.
Well, Justin, as they say, all good things must come to an end.
Alas, they must. However, this isn't the end because next week, same time, same channel, we drop another episode.
So get excited because we're going to be diving deeper into all the topics of the not so subtle truth about success and
the art of sucking less in the pursuit of it. So join the conversation below and don't forget to subscribe.